call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Board of Education for Flossmoor School District 161 for Monday, October 27, 2014. Can we have a roll call, please?
Okay, Paredes.
Here.
Odom. Here. Carroll.
Here.
Marks.
Present.
Langston.
Here.
Simmons.
Here.
Quorum is present. At this time, we will have audience comments. This is the opportunity that we give to members of our audience if they would like to address the board with regard to something that is not on our agenda. Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the Western After School presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Langston. If I could have Dr. Prosen please come up to introduce your group that is presenting this evening. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. 21st century learning can take place anywhere at any time, and one of the most powerful reflective pieces I've heard about 21st century learning came from a teacher that talked about how students who had moved beyond the course were still involved and engaged in the learning that took place. So we have a combination of some current students as well as some students from Harvard that are going to talk about the learning extension beyond the classroom. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Bauer as well as Kaylin, Kate, and Kelvin to present to you this evening.
So as Dr. Prosen said, I have two former students and a current student, and I want to introduce Calvin Eckert. He's going to kind of talk a little bit later about computer programming and coding club. We also have Kayla Matthews, who is a current student of mine. She's going to be talking about her Odyssey learning path and taking that to the next level. And we're also going to be talking with Kate Nelson, who is also involved in the coding club, but also extensive work within Khan Academy. And so when I was talking to Dr. Prosen about one of my ideas, I really wanted to kind of engage in a conversation about 21st century learning beyond the classroom. We have a very limited time with kids every day. And with these tools and with what we have readily available to us, we have limitless possibilities for these students. And when I started to reflect about my own learning and what I perceived my teacher as, I thought it was a person that knew everything. And now as I stand before you, I know that that is completely false. I had to kind of come to the grips with that my kids were learning more than I knew. And I had to be okay with that. And I had to learn from them. And I have a few students here that we introduced coding, HTML coding, and we just started basically, I brought in a presenter who was a parent, and she taught them the basics of coding. We gave them a platform called Code Academy, and just kind of got them introduced and let them go. And I have two students here, and we'll talk about it a little bit, that are beyond anything that I can even imagine with computer programming and coding today. In fact, they have corrected some of the presenters who have presented to them on their actual tags and different things like that. So learning for my kids is something that I'm really passionate about now. These kids are growing rapidly, and the amount of information they're able to access is limitless. And we should be empowering them and cultivating that student ownership piece within each building, because when they leave, there is that endless possibility. Also, I had to find the right platform. Not every platform is right for every student. We have some great ones within the district, and Odyssey is one of them that we're going to be learning from. But also we engaged with Khan Academy and having students really find what really suits their needs as a student, because although we use data to help guide our instruction, we also need to recognize that these students are individuals with individual personalities. And what they like and what they're passionate about is different for each student. So that's why we have three presenters with three different platforms, some of them combined and integrated, but others completely separate. And then I had to let them play. At the end of the day, they're kids. And we want to keep, getting them exposed to as much academics as possible. But we had an application called Hopscotch, which is on all their iPads. And one of the first coding lessons, I had no idea how to code. So I was just like, hey, you guys just figure it out. And they did, because it's fun, and they're kids. And they want to drag stuff and drop it and see what happens to that. And that engagement and their ability to play is what really took them above where I was, and continues to make them rise, because they're engaged and learning is fun. And they're not seeing it as learning, they're seeing it as something that they're able to create. And then I also had to, this is kind of contradictory in itself, but I had to encourage intrinsic motivations. Now, encouraging is giving them, a reward, but I had to continue to cultivate them to stop thinking of it as like, it's a homework assignment for you to do 20 minutes on this at night, and more of who had some great success last night, who created something. Can we share that? Can we collaborate on that? I'm really trying to cultivate that, because really, that's when you see tremendous growth, is with students that have intrinsic motivations. And I have 3 here today, and I know that we're going to make it quick, so I wanted to give them an opportunity to be highlighted and also recognized. So the first one we're going to talk about is this smiling young man, and his name is Calvin Eckler, and he was a part of my coding club. He was also a student of mine for 2 years with looping. And in this picture, and I'm going to let him describe it real quick, is a computer he built and that he's working on coding from. So Calvin, without further ado, can you tell us how you got so much passion in coding and why you were so motivated at home to do it?
Why, yeah, well, I have you to thank for introducing me, of course. But then, once I actually had figure it out, I realized, hey, wait a minute. If I can figure out how to do this, then I can actually get a lot of money from it. Because of course, since like everyone has a computer lately, everyone also will need stuff on the computer to do stuff, obviously. So if you're a coder, you can make a lot of money off the fact that people have computers, because then you can just make something and for everyone to have. And then it's like somebody might recreate something like, I don't know, like a cell, and then make it better, and then they become a billionaire really easily.
And there goes that intrinsic motivation. But Calvin has been an amazing highlight, and also I've seen Calvin grow both academically and personally with it. I think Coding Club gave Calvin an opportunity to be a true leader within the classroom. I saw Calvin really trying to collaborate and help other students and scaffold them to a place that he could help and actually collaborate with them instead of just teaching them, but grow as a teammate. And so I wanted to go ahead and thank Calvin for helping us out tonight. And I think the world is up for whatever Calvin wants it to be right now. I've seen some of where Calvin's gone from, and I'm just really excited for him in the future. So thank you, Calvin. Another highlight is Kate Nelson. Kate, with the parents' agreement, I'm able to share where Kate has kind of gone from and to where she ended up when she was in my classroom. Kate started off with an NWA at 221, and she ended at 261. That's 40 points of growth within 2 years, which is amazing amount of growth. And a lot of that from conversation with the parents was contributed by Khan Academy. We introduced Khan Academy to them 2 years ago, or now 3 years ago, when I had Kate in my 4th grade class. She's now a 6th grader. And Kate had an amazing motivation to do the right thing in class. And I saw her have an amazing motivation at home to just keep going and to push herself to places that I didn't even know were possible. She also was part of Coding Club, and that's what I talked about, the integrated one. She was also one that was learning Python, a coding language, when I didn't even know that was a language. And she was teaching other kids. She was like, all right, I'm going to do the Python corner. I was like, you brought a Python? So I'm going to have Kate just kind of talk. Kate, what really motivated you to work so hard on Khan Academy at home and that helped you take you to that far?
Well, I like challenges.
Like challenges? Yeah? Were you motivated by the fact that you could just keep going? Yeah? Good. Can we give Kate a round of applause? When I was reflecting on who I wanted to bring up, I was just seeing those students that really pushed themselves and took what we gave them and saw it as a limitless possibility.
Same target, and I am sick of it. So I really want to work at that target so I can have a different target. So I don't have to have the same target all the time.
Good. Excellent job. Perfectly recognized. I kind of just wanted to end with the fact that these are not my only ones. Avery Calhoun's over here, and if I could bring 4 up, Avery would have been my 4th. She's another student currently in my class and an exceptional student at that. But with that, this really does open up limitless possibilities, and I know I keep saying that, but that's the truth. It's not for every student. Every student is not going to be able to be highlighted like this. But when we really motivate students and find a platform that works for them and continually encourage intrinsic motivations in them being the best version of themselves, I think amazing things can happen. I think these are 3 excellent examples and a 4th excellent example over there. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for presenting with your class. You're doing wonderful things. You're an excellent teacher, and you are definitely helping our students as they move along. We have something from the Board of Education and myself for the students. If they would come around, we'll start with Ms. Langston. We'll shake their hand, and we'll give them a certificate. Thank you very much. Dr. Frozen, thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
Get down over here.
Thank you, Mr. Dower and the students from Weston Avenue. At this time, we will move on and have our Parker construction update.
Thank you. Mr. Guy, please come on up.
Hopefully everyone has had an opportunity to do a quick review of the fine document that I put together. I have to admit, I have no idea what those your kids are talking about. and I applaud them for taking the time and having the energy to do everything they can to improve themselves. And when you can communicate, you'll be a success, I can assure you of that. A couple of things I do want to highlight in the report. Storage building, other than having the roof trim on and a couple of doors in place, is actually complete. From a general construction standpoint, the fire protection piping will be going in this week. The HVAC piping and electrical work will also be continuing now that it's essentially dry. And our goal for that project is actually to have it occupied in early February, which means that we need to sit down with Mr. Stackers and go through the kind of shelving that he would like. You know, how much does he want to be able to use a small pallet jack to put things on, and how much does he want to break down and use it in that manner. Pardon?
Who are we meeting with?
Scott.
Scott.
Oh,
Is that okay?
yes. I didn't
Would you
hear,
like to
I didn't hear it.
Oh, you
last
didn't hear
week.
that? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, actually, Scott and I have this thing on myself. Parker Junior High, load-bearing masonry is probably a day and a half away from being complete. The structural steel is scheduled to be delivered tomorrow. And erection should start either late tomorrow afternoon or on Wednesday. I looked at the next 10 or 12 days of weather, and if the forecast is accurate, we have no rain in the forecast, and we have generally temperatures in the 35 to 40 overnight and in the 45 to 50 during the day. So we continue to be fortunate, I guess. We have a lot of rain in the summer, but we're fortunate right now where we're at. The joist for the roof structure will arrive on Friday of next week. And we hope to have a roof system on and the building essentially, from a roof perspective, dry by the middle to the end of November. Big picture, we've lost a couple, I would tell you we've lost some days, but we're pushing tower, who's kind of leading the parade right now, to put the right effort in on manpower to pick up a couple of days between now and, say, Thanksgiving. Questions? Be happy to answer them. Yes?
One comment, one question. The comment is, it is really nice to see the parking lot come together. I drove in to get my daughter and kind of see all of that come together. It's really nice from when we saw the summer. I was like,
Yeah, phase A, actually, essentially everything was done in phase A as we had planned, which was before the 15th of August. If you paid any attention, we were thinking of putting sod on all of the area. And I said, wait, we've got a chance here. We are getting a reasonably good lawn in place. We'll make the final decision on that probably next spring. But so far, it seems to be doing a good job of creating a lawn. And that is a lot less expensive than putting sod down. So,
That was a great idea.
he and I argued about it.
the one question is the same question and I want to just keep hearing it from you every time. So from where you're saying and where Towers is and our progression, this looks like we're going to be delivered on time,
Yes.
2 days, and
Yes.
then within the budget that we have set without the overage. I mean,
Yes.
no contingency, but
Right,
everything is.
right, everything.
Okay.
Once we covered all the ground underneath it, we're past everything that
All the surprises.
we could see as any kind of a significant surprise. Yeah.
We'll be in the budget.
And that's why we will, you heard us say, we better.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay. All righty.
Mr. Rossi? Go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. When I first came here, I remember your classes. The years go on. I just try to give you a brief summary of the performance of the pool for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2014. For the total interest earned by loss for District 161 for the fiscal year was $143,395. With an average balance of $35 million, the cash basis rate of return to the district was 40 basis points, or 0.4%. This represents a combination of the pooled investment, which yielded 1.28%, and interest earned in the money market, which is a significantly lower rate, and changes in market value. Interest rate levels during the fiscal year remained historically low. Money market rates such as the liquid asset fund, Illinois School District Liquid Asset Fund, had a rate of 1/100% for the entire fiscal year. 1-year treasuries were 12 basis points, 0.12%. CDs, 6-month CDs were 42/100%, and 3-year treasuries were 74/100%. So you can see that if you're borrowing, it was a great time to borrow. But as far as investing is concerned, rates are at historic lows. Keep in mind that all your funds are restricted in their investment type by the Illinois Public Funds Act, which is very conservative, rightfully so, and you can only invest in limited things. You can't invest in things such as stocks and things of that sort. Interest rate levels of the portfolio are primarily tied to action taken by the Federal Reserve, which kind of dictates short-term rates, and a lot of our money is short-term. The Federal Reserve has maintained its policy of keeping rates near zero the whole year. And right as of today, analysts right now, the best bet is that rates won't go up until at least September 2015. So I expect until that time rates will continue to be low. Reasons cited for this include worker wages not increasing as expected, inflation remaining below the Fed's target of 2%, and workplace participation being at generational low. Concerning economic growth in the United States, We continue to experience slow growth patterns. The Federal Reserve has lowered its expectation for growth in our country to between 2 and 3% through 2017. This low growth combined with little inflationary pressure and insufficient employment levels provides a backdrop for continued low interest rates. And I do want to add that, last year, when the Board of Education approved your levy that Brandon's going to be discussing shortly, it's going to be based off a 1.5% rate of inflation, which is what rate inflation was last year. It's trending about that this year as well, 1.5 to 1.7%. Risks to the economic outlook continue to come from outside the United States. Areas of concern include fragile economies in most of Europe and China, and geopolitical tensions from Ukraine, Syria, and Iraq. One area of major concern that's being really focused on now is the rising tension between China and Japan, which some believe is the biggest geopolitical risk to the global economy ahead. On June 30, 2014, there were $323 million in the pool, which was invested in over 300 separate investments. If you turn to page 7 of the investment report, there's a pie chart on the bottom half, I believe. Oh, under, yeah. You can see that on June 30, 2014, 59% of the portfolio was in investments maturing in under 1 year. That's it's an increase from 50% the previous year. 15% 1 to 3 years, 18% 3 to 5 years, and 8% over 5 years. So you can see that the portfolio during the fiscal year, although we put more on the short end, we extended a little bit further out on the long end. If you turn to page 9, please. Of the pooled investment portfolio, 40% of the portfolio on June 30, 2014 were in municipal bonds, 10% were in bank and corporate notes, 37% certificates of deposit, 13% in government and government agencies. And please note that the certificates of deposit are never invested above the FDIC levels, guaranteed insured levels. Concerning investment strategy, always a significant percentage of our money has to be invested short-term to meet cash flow needs. Most of your money comes in March in the tax collection and in August in the tax collection, and a lot of that money has to be, and your biggest expenditures are June when you're on the summer payrolls for the teachers, and in December 1st when you make your bond payments. So a lot of the money has to be invested short for cash flow needs. We continue to maintain a strategy of preserving capital with low tolerance for risk. We also recognize that the longer the Federal Reserve remains on hold and doesn't raise rates, the longer we continue to go out on the yield curve. So you can see that we've extended a little bit out to take advantage of that. We'll continue to look into the 3 to 7 year range for opportunities as they present themselves. So for example, in September, I purchased 3 CDs, one from Goldman Sachs Bank, one from Discover Bank, and one from Capital One Bank, all maturing in December 2019 and yielding between 2.05 and 2.15%. So it's kind of an anemic historic rate, but it helps boost the portfolio up. And I feel comfortable where we're positioned right now, and I'd be welcome to take any questions right now.
Any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Gross.
Thank you.
Very much. Board of Education, I want to let you know that we usually couple this with our district audit. We had to extend our audit. We're waiting for an inventory to be done. The audit will be presented by Legacy on December 12th, which will actually be a regular board meeting. We could do it before, but it would be someone else giving the presentation other than who had completed the audit. So it will be on December 8th, our board meeting. They will discuss, and if there's any questions, then we'll go for approval at that time. Mr. Grossi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Everything.
Ms. Labella. All right, for the review of the 2014 tax levy.
Okay.
I mean, you're getting less than 1% on your money.
Yeah.
And your other local income is fees, which really are pretty minimal. This is your money. This is it, your levies. Let's talk about, it's October, why am I standing here? You have to adopt an estimate. So you have to be looking at your estimate levy 20 days prior to your hearing. Our COW is in November 24th, and you would be adopting December 8th, so you don't have 20 days between those two, so that's why you see me here tonight, okay? So this is a little early. You won't be seeing any notification in the paper until probably the first week of December, because we are caught, the law says no more than 14, no less than 7 days, so I have that window between, for your hearing when you adopt. We'll get into that a little more, but that's why we're talking about it now. Again, we'll be putting it in the newspaper. And we will have that hearing on December 8th, that is your regular board meeting. At the same time, you'll be talking to Legacy, and to piggyback off of what Mr. Duster said, remember we changed in appraisal companies. We went from American Appraisal to Industrial Appraisal. And whenever you change companies, you're bound to have some back and forth, and we're not happy with this, and they're not happy with that. So it took us a little bit. So the report is actually complete, but it's in for printing, and the auditors won't close until they have the down copy. So we're waiting on the down copy. Okay, let's talk about the basic principles of the property tax. Now, you've all done this before, so we're going to kind of go a little quicker, but it's really good refresher to understand how the levy works. In its purest form, forget about the tax cap for now. We'll bring that in a little bit. What happens? The board approves the tax rate, okay? You take that rate and you apply it to the assessed value of your property, and you come up with an extension. So let's say that the board approves a rate of $2 per $100 of value, and the property is assessed at $10,000. So you simply take your $10,000 divided by the 100, you multiply it by 2, and your tax is $200. Okay? Simple. What should happen is that the taxing body receives increases of revenue as the property values increase, or in these days decrease, right? So if your $10,000 property increases to $12,000, it proportionately is a 20% increase in your property value, and you're going to get a 20% increase in your property tax. That's the way it was designed to work. Now we get this whole assessment piece thrown in there. The state law actually requires that all of our properties should be assessed at 1/3 of the fair market value of the property, okay? Except for Cook County. Cook County has an exception. Cook County has multiple classifications, and in 2009, the assessed valuation of the properties is somewhere in the range between 10% if you're a resident to 25% of fair market value, depending on what kind of commercial property, what it's on, okay? But the rest of the state is at 1/3, 33 1/3. Cook County, because it's so large, is assessed in 3 cycles: north, south, and Chicago. Okay. This year is the south side. Okay. Then they take our assessed values, they add a multiplier to it, and that becomes your equalized assessed value. So, what do we hear? It's south side. Bloom, the assessor came out with this statement. Bottom line is, in all of their little press release, the most important thing to know is you're looking at a decrease of 7.4% on the values of the homes. Again, another hit. Okay. And again, like I said, you bring in the multiplier. What the multiplier does, it is designed so that you can compare Cook County properties with the rest of the state. Because remember, they're all being assessed at 33 1/3. We're getting assessed somewhere between 10 and 25. So you can't compare them. So you need to add this multiplier. So if Cook County was assessing higher than the rest of the state, you would expect to see a multiplier lower than 1. But since we're assessing less than the rest of the state, you're going to expect to see a multiplier that is higher than 1, right? Yeah, got it. Now this, I'm going to, all honesty here, I shamelessly borrow this slide from Rob every single year because it's a great slide. How they provide a multiplier is it is a 3-year average calculation. So we know what 2011 is, we know what 2012 is, and these are the different classifications, and this is where they were actually assessed at by what the Department of Revenue tells us. We don't know 2013's numbers yet. So what Rob's been doing is really just duplicating 12, drops it into 13, and says this is a pretty good estimate once I weight the average. And they come up with 12.78, which is somewhere between 10 and 25, so that makes some sense. But in order to calculate it, remember, it's supposed to equal 33 1/3. So everybody remember our basic algebra? We do the 12.78x, so it'll be our multiplier, that equals 33 1/3. Calculated after you get your multipliers, we're estimating it's probably going to be somewhere around 2.6, which is another 2% reduction from last year's multiplier. So what does that mean? That means when we start looking at what our equalized assessed valuation is going to be, it is going to be somewhere around that 7.4% that we know our assessed value is down, plus another 2% to account for the multiplier. So you're looking at about 10% drop in EAV. Over the last, since 2005, this is a 2013 number. You can see, unfortunately, a nasty trend going on here. Our assessed valuation is down here way lower than it was in 2005. With another 10% drop, we're going to be even lower for next year. Okay. So what does that really mean? Well, in '94, they passed the tax cut. So what did the tax cut do? What it really did was it changed the amount of money that you get in levy from being property-driven to being CPI-driven, okay? It no longer really mattered how much your property value went up or down. It mattered what CPI was, because what the law says is you are limited to 5% or CPI, whichever is lower, okay? So let's go back to our example. We have that $10,000 property and it increased to $12,000 with that $2 levy. But you can no longer get that full amount. You can only get a maximum of 5%. So if you took the $200 you paid in the prior year, you multiply it by 5%, you can only get $210. Now divide that by, oops, I'm gonna go back. All right, divide that by the $12,000 you're at now. You're only at $1.75. Your rate went down because you could only capture 5% instead of that 20%. Okay? I'm going to go back and slide that in that order. CPI since 2006 has been, with the exception of that 2008 year, well under 5%. So these are the actual amounts you've been getting. And like Rob Note said to you, we're at 1.5 this year. We're at 1.7 last year. We're at 1.5 this year. If you take a look historically, that's what CPI has been doing. Now this is the top of 5%, so it looks crazier than it is because it's a small range. But you can see, remember the year that we were at 0.1? I mean, literally, your levy was frozen. And even here now, we used to be running in a range between 2 and 4. Now we're really going in a range between 1 and 3. And right now we're at 1.5, which is exactly right there, between 1 and 3. Okay? So, what's happening? We are going to be limited by, okay, let's go back. We're going to be limited by CPI. But our values of our homes are declining. So what happens? Let's go back to the example again. So you have that $10,000 property value. Let's say it decreases to $9,000, okay? You're still going to get that 5%, that $210. But now instead of dividing by that $12,000 of the property value increased, you're dividing it by $9,000, the amount that your property value decreased. So what was the effect? Your rate. It's not 175 anymore, it's 233. In an era of declining property values, what you're going to find is your tax rate continues to increase. The value, the amount of money that you're getting is still only CPI. Because property values just doesn't matter anymore. They took that out of the equation. Okay, so, right again, total taxes rise by CPI, even with property values declining. So, if the rates keep going up, can we keep levying higher and higher? We've kind of had this discussion before, but the answer is no. You can't, not in certain funds. Some funds, yes, and we'll get there, but some funds, no. There are statutory maximums in your ed fund, in your O&M fund, in your special ed, life safety, and working cash. Basically every place you need the money, you're capped. Not only by the overall number, but by individually within the funds, which you don't see on your property tax bill. You only see one number. Okay? Currently, in your 2013 levy, you maxed out your education, you maxed out your operations and maintenance, you were pretty close to maxing out special ed. At 40 cents, you were at 3.8. Pretty close to maxing out your life safety, and you were pretty close to maxing out your working cash. That was last year's levy. If we put on that 1.5% of money in the same fund, in the same proration as we did last year, we would exceed the education fund rate by 34 cents. We would exceed special ed by almost 4 cents. We would exceed operation and maintenance by a little over 5 cents. We would exceed the maximum working cash by 0.004. We would exceed life safety by almost a penny. Bottom line, we would leave on the table $1.5 million because they would pull you back to those rate maximums. So, what do we do? Are we going to be short $1.5 million? No, we are not. We're going to levy in a different fund more than we usually would. And then later on this year, I'm going to bring you a resolution that moves that money from the fund where it is to the fund where we need it. Here's what I'm proposing, where we propose to levy. $13.3 million in ed, 1.5 in special ed, 2.1 million in operations and maintenance, 4.7 million in transportation. Because transportation does not have a rate limit. So we're going to levy it to transportation, and then you're going to move it to the ed fund where you need it. Remember, your overall rate is going to be capped. You are overall going to get 1.5%. But in order to get 1.5% and not actually lose money, you need to put it here. Okay? And then the other side. This is really tiny, and I apologize, but it's a really great spreadsheet that PMA has, and I use it every day because it's pretty and it works. It enables me to put in the numbers and stress test your levy. Okay? And what that stress test does is tell me how much money I need to know in here. Because remember, we don't even really know what the EAV is yet. We're estimating. We know that the AV, the median AV is a reduction of 7.4. Our estimate is that the multiplier is another 2%. So we're looking at a 10% decrease. But if I'm wrong, and you are even lower, and we don't prepare for it, and we don't levy that money, then you won't get it. You'll lose it. So I'm stress test on this to a negative 15%, a lot of low side, and a high of 5, which we know is not ever going to happen. But we are going on a low of negative 15. And in my conversations with Rob, that's what he's comfortable as well, and that's what he's telling districts, is go to negative 15. Okay. So 4.7 million in transportation should give you enough money there to cover whatever happens in change in need. It will, unfortunately, give you a truth in taxation that says you're going to be increasing taxes 12.13%. The truth of the matter is that's not going to happen. You're going to increase taxes by 1.5% because that's all you can increase them by. This is nothing but a game, quite honestly. So your newspaper block box, first week of December, is going to say 12.13. Remember, Cook County will pull you back. The resolution that we will also pass with the levy is going to say, take it all from the transportation fund. Every place else we need the money. If you need to pull us back because we levy too much, take it all out of transportation, because that's where we're pushing it all in anyway. You're still gonna have more money in transportation than you need to move into education where you actually need the money. But you've got to remember, your education levy itself, dollar number, has been on the decline. You have been getting about $13 million. You're only going to be able to capture about 12. We're going to have to move it from transportation into ed. So the December board meeting, you'll have that hearing and the adoption, and we will then file that with the Cook County Clerk's office. Question? Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. President,
Yeah.
very useful, very helpful, very informative. Small audience here. What are we doing to bulletproof ourselves from that 12.3 hitting the newspaper and educate the public more? I guess they should come to this meeting. Yes, they should hear it. That does not happen, and you have a lot of people who don't have kids here who are going to see that.
On my website, on my page,
Okay.
there are FAQs on tax levy, and there are other links that you can go to get more information. I link to the assessor's office, I link to the Cook County Clerk's office, I link to other places as well. And there are, talking points. Historically, I'll be honest with you, don't get too many people here.
Okay. So we have a community that is educated, right, in some of this, and just because we may not, I'm trying to like.
I'm trying to see, we can potentially send out an e-blast if you care to with those FAQs again. This morning, so Kathy now has the updated version and she will be changing it on board docs in the morning.
Thank you. So it will be out, okay.
It will be out there in the morning.
Yeah, and I guess that transparency just.
Yeah, no, and I always put all of my presentations up on my page as well. So
And
that'll be up in mine.
it was just really helpful for me then too, and I did the same things then too,
Yeah.
so, I get it and was
Yeah,
quiet.
about the only one who gets excited over this is me.
I'm very excited.
Thank
There you go.
Thank you for being so thorough.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Fran, for the benefit of everyone here, would you go over what happens if we mentioned leaving money on the table? What happens going forward if we choose not to levy this?
If you choose not to levy the full 1.5% or accidentally leave money on the table, and quite frankly, an awful lot of districts have done that because they don't understand this well enough, it's not just a one-year hit. And that's what people need to really remember and understand. It's not just a one-year hit. Because the next year, you only get CPI over your extension. Not what you could have levied had you done it properly, but over what you actually did levy. So it becomes that rolling ball, and it just continues to exacerbate the amount of money that you will leave on the table. So it's not just whatever you shorted yourself in this year. If we had shorted ourselves at $1.5 million, think about it, it'd be $1.5 million that year, and then it would be whatever CPI is the next year of that amount of money, because you can no longer regain it. So it's an additional 1.5 plus whatever CPI is. And it just continues year after year. Did I answer your question? Anyone else?
Actually, I have a question. Where exactly is your page?
Should be under departments, business on there. And if they're not allowed, I will check it tomorrow morning when we have some e-chocolates. I know I had to repost some things, so I'll double check that in the morning as well.
Anyone else? Thank you. Our president has arrived. We have a gavel back.
Okay, next on the agenda is the discussion of the Delegate Assembly resolution. Mr. Lester?
Thank you very much. You have a packet that is set up in front of you. I'm requesting that the board take a look at this, read the information. The these are resolutions that have been set forth by all kinds of different school boards throughout the state, other organizations, and they're being supported by the IASB. Ms. Odom will be at the conference to vote on behalf of our Board of Education on the 22nd of November. And at our next regular board meeting, which will be the next one, of course, we will have to tell Ms. Odom how the board wants her to vote. And that is how she will vote on that Saturday. So if you please take a look, we can have discussion on this information at the regular board meeting and give the results of the discussion and go from there. Are there any questions?
There's no difference between what you handed out and the ones from our board docs.
Right.
Are these the same?
They're right. They're right down.
That's right, I got my answer. It's okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, next on the agenda is executive session. We'll be going into executive sessions to discuss matters related to personnel and student discipline. Anticipate we will be in executive session for about 45 minutes. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. Mrs. Carroll, Mr. Paredes, roll call please, Kathy.
Okay, Marks?
Yes.
Odom? Yes. Paredes?
Yes?
Simmons? Langston?
Yes.
Carroll?
Yes.
Lunsford?
Yes. We're in executive session.
Mr. Simmons will call you, we'll hang